Well, let's start some controversy. Who's the greatest chess player of all time? Is it Magnus Carlsen? Is it Garry Kasparov? Is it somebody else, Bobby Fischer? Do you have a favorite, Alex?
So, whenever I hear this question, I interpret it in a very specific way where it's not who was the most talented chess player or who had the most impact on the chess world, but who is the greatest at playing chess. Where if you were putting all of these players at their peak, who would be the best? And, we're kind of living in a world where obviously humans are becoming more like cyborgs and their tools
I like
make
how
them a lot
calmly
more
you've said that.
powerful.
Yes.
And the computer is the most powerful tool for chess that we've ever witnessed. And the top players now, someone like Magnus Carlsen or Garry Kasparov, if they were going to go towards people like, even Lasker or Bobby Fischer back in the day, Lasker, he was world champion for 27 years. He was the best in his field by far. But would he be able to stand up to someone like Magnus Carlsen who has had these tools? I don't think so. So most chess players have said Garry Kasparov, and I think even Magnus has said that in the past. But I like to think of it as Magnus in his peak and Garry at his peak. And because Magnus was able to live more in a computer era, I feel like so far he's the greatest of all time. And some studies say things like how there's rating inflation, but I looked into some of them and they basically calculated people's play in over the years, and it seems that there hasn't been inflation. People are just getting better, and I think it's because you have better tools at chess.
And also, one of the cases. Wait, what's your?
I was gonna say I disagree with that.
Good, make it interesting.
I think I would judge the greatest player of all time in relative to the time that they lived in. And Magnus, although he is technically the strongest chess player in history, that is because he had computers to study chess with. And of course, if you compare him to like Garry Kasparov, he plays most like stockfish. But Garry Kasparov at his time, he beat more players of his skill level than Magnus did. And Magnus loses more often. He also, of course, held the belt for 20 years more. So I'd say actually, because Garry lacked the help of computers to study chess and overall performed better against players of his skill level, I think he would be number one.
Nice. Yeah, but I mean, the case that people make for Magnus on many, I mean, what Alex said, but also Magnus plays a lot, and he plays a lot blitz, bullet, and like he gets drunk, and like he's really putting himself out there, and in all kinds of conditions, and is able to dominate in a lot of them. We get to see many of the like losses or blunders and all that kind of stuff because he just puts himself out there. And I think Kasparov was much more like,
never saw him play drunk, right?
Yeah.
I just don't know.
And it's very focused on the World Championship. It's very like very limited number of games and very focused on winning. And so there's some aspect to the versatility, the aggressive play, the fun, all of that that I think you have to give credit to.
100%.
In terms of just the scope, the scale of the variety of genius exhibited by Magnus.
And he might not even be done yet. I don't know if he'll ever hit 2,900, but we can't judge yet because he's not at the peak of his career potentially.
What do you think about him not playing World Championship? Isn't that wild? The entirety of the history of chess in the 20th century going like, meh. Let's walking away from this one tournament that seems to be at the center of chess. What do you think about that decision?
I mean, you can't help but be disappointed as a chess fan who wants to see the best player in the world defend his title. But I also understand it on a personal level and not feeling as satisfied when you're going to the World Championship and having to defend against people who are less strong than you. And also imagine winning world championships and not feeling a joy out of that.
Yeah.
So maybe by not doing that and focusing instead on a goal like 2,900, he'll be more likely to accomplish it because he's focusing on what actually motivates him to play chess. But I do think that it will hurt how we judge the next world champion.
I think it won't change him being the best player in the world. And for someone to replace him, even let's say like Nepo versus Sting, even if one of them win, and right, on some stance it does lower the merit because now who has the World Chess Championship title isn't actually the best player in the world. And that has happened before in the past, but still going to take them the same effort to prove when they would pass him, like 10, 20 years to become stronger than Magnus. So I don't think it changes the skill level that it takes to become the best chess player in the world. I think for chess fans, it's very disappointing, but I think in the overall like grand scheme of like the public view to people who don't really, so like, what breaks the popular culture, and you think of what names people know who don't play chess, like Bobby Fischer did it. Most people know Kasparov or Magnus. It takes the same ability and talent, and that doesn't change.
I think it does change, though, if you're playing a player who's not as strong. But I see your point as well, and I know we differ on this. Like I heard you ask Magnus, but what is your take on it?
Well, listen, his answer is kind of brilliant, which he's not saying he's bored of the World Championship.
Mm-hmm.
He's bored of a process that doesn't determine the best player.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's too anxiety-inducing to him to have a small number of games. He's he doesn't mind losing, which is really fascinating, to a better player,
right,
or somebody who's his level. He's more anxious about losing to
a weaker player.
The weaker player because of the small sample size. Now, if like poker players had that anxiety, they would never play at all, right? That's the World Series of Poker. You get to lose against weaker players all the time. That's the roll of the dice. But that's an interesting perspective that he would love to play 20, 30, 40 games in the World Championship, but then he would enjoy it much more. And also play shorter games because they emphasize the like pure chess, actually being able to like much more variety in the middle game, just to see a bunch of chaos and see how you're able to compute, calculate, and intuition, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's beautiful. I wish the chess world would step up and meet him in a place that makes sense. Change the World Championship. So FIDE changing it somehow, that allows for that, or having other really respected tournaments that become like an annual thing that step up to that, or more kind of online YouTube type of competitions, which I think they're trying to do more and more, like the Crypto Cup and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and the Grand Tour.
The Grand Tour
does play in, which takes a lot of the top players, and they do it online in shorter formats.
But there's, so that's his perspective. My perhaps narrow perspective is I romanticize the Olympic Games, and those are every 4 years, and the World Championships, because they're rare, because the sample size is so small. That's where the magic happens. Everything's on the line for people that spend their whole life, 20 years of dedication. Everything you have, every minute of the day is spent for that moment. You think about like gymnastics at the Olympic Games. There's certain sports where a single mistake and you're fucked. And that stress, that pressure, it can break people, or it can create magic. Like a person that's the underdog has the best night of their life, or the person that's been dominating for years all of a sudden slips up. That drama from a human perspective is beautiful. So I still like the World Championships. But then again, looking at all the draws, looking at like, well, the magic isn't quite there. So to me, when I see faster games of chess, that's much more beautiful. So, but that I don't understand the game of chess deeply enough to know, like, does it have to be so many draws? Like, is there a way to create a more dynamic chess? I mean, he talked about random chess, like with a random starting position. That's really interesting. But then, of course, that's like, then you do have to play hundreds of games and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So but I think it's great that the world number one is struggling with these questions, because he's in the position, he has the leverage to actually change the game of chess, as it's publicly seen, as it's publicly played. So it's interesting. He's still young enough to to dominate for quite a long time if he wants. So I don't know. With Kasparov, the fight between nations. I hope they have the world championship, and I hope I hope he's still a part of it somehow. I hope he changes his mind
and comes back.
Some kind of dramatic thing. I don't know, but it is his heart is not in it, and then that's not beautiful to see, right? Yeah, it is beautiful that the thing he wants is a great game of chess against an opponent that's his level or better. And that's great that he's coming from that place. But I hope he comes back somehow, because the world championship is a special thing in any sport.
So you do wish that the person who wins the world championship is the best player in the world?
No. I hope that the best people in the world, the two best people in the world, are the ones that sit down. But the person that wins is the person that's the magic of it. Nobody knows who's going to win. I think Magnus is so he really wants the best person to win. Like that's why he wants the large sample size. But to me, there's some magic to it. The stress of it, the drama of it. That's all part of the game. Like, it's not just about the purity of the game, like the calculation, the pure chess of it. It's also like the drama, like the pressure, the drama, all of it, the shit talking if it gets to you, the mind games.
This is the part that's fun to watch, but less fun to be playing.
But that's why it's great. Who can rise under that pressure and who melts under that pressure.